With the introduction of the SMB2 mushroom and Mario Maker's 2 update, that led me to thinking, could you remake the entire game in Super Mario Maker 2? I mean, with the power-up you can stand on most enemies, pick them up to throw them, and even super jump from crouching, so the original controls are pretty spot on. Well, that's what I've spent the last week doing, recreating all 20 levels to the best of my abilities. I even put them all in a world, so feel free to check them out if you'd like, but I wanted to show you how I tried to remake the levels in the immense struggles and difficulty I had doing so. Now, immediately, 1-1 cannot be 100% replicated. That's because you can't set the first sub-area to be vertically based. I'm forced to go down a pipe, so I make quick do of that. And you know what I realized from this? I think that Mario Bros. 2 is still the only Mario game where the first level starts as being vertically based. But anyway, I wasn't able to tell how far Mario needed to fall, so I downloaded the map and went into Photoshop. I started copy and pasting the clouds because they could be used as a unit of measurement, and after lots of copies, I found that from the door to the ground, it took 19 clouds. I had to do this for almost every level, because sometimes it was really hard to tell what the spacing was. But that was the least of my problems. Next, I had to figure out the turnips. Is this something you could even do? Well, kind of. I started with adding coins in their spots, which was an okay idea, but it left a hole in the ground. Then I tried Buzzy Beetles, which felt more like grabbing a turnip, but again, there was a hole in the ground. I decided to resort to solid ground with clouds that you can grab. You don't get anything out of the clouds, but there really wasn't anything else I could do. Snowballs was also an option, but that would mean every stage would have to be snow-themed, which doesn't seem like the best idea. Now, I did watch a video of someone else recreating 1-1 in Mario Bros. 2, and their idea was to put the turnip items on a track that move up and down. While I think this is a very novel concept, it seemed a bit weird to make the turnips only grabbable at certain times. And there's really not a right or wrong answer to this, but I stuck with using clouds. The next line of order was making the Shy Guys. I decided to use Koopa Troopas because their properties are very similar. The red Shy Guys fall off platforms like the green Koopas, and the pink Shy Guys stay on platforms like the red Koopas. Now yes, there is a shell turnip and Shy Guys don't have shells, but I have very limited options to work with, and this seemed like the best choice. In terms of including the subspace world, where you throw the potions, well, there's not really any way to recreate that. There's just not enough doors to be able to switch course themes, and on top of that, doors were static in Mario Maker 2. So instead, I opted to add all the mushrooms and invisible blocks for people to grab. Some of them you're not going to be able to get, others you can if you've played a lot of SMB2 and already know where they spawn. The semi-solids I was able to mostly replicate, but there were a few that were 2 units in length. This was an issue because the smallest you can make for semi-solids in Mario Maker 2 is 3 units, so those can't be recreated perfectly. Now you've probably also noticed the flying Goombas. Those are replaced with the Tweeter enemy. They both move and jump a little bit, so I figured these would be fine substitutes. I also replaced all the cherries with coins, so while you can't spawn in a star after getting 5 coins, I can still grab them at least. Another issue with replicating Mario Bros. 2 levels is losing the playstyle when getting hit, so I made sure that most pipes spawn mushrooms for easy access. As for the logs, there's no way to create lift generators that respawn and move in one direction, so I just have them go up and down. Now, remaking Ninjas was extremely hard to figure out. At first, I used flying rocky wrenches. That's because they moved up and down like Ninjas, but they also threw their wrench projectiles. So I put a Goomba on a track and used that instead. I felt like this made more sense as a Ninja than as turnips, but again, there is no right or wrong answer. Now for the secret door in the cave, I simply ran out of room, but I wanted to add a 50 coin in that same location so people would have some incentive to check it out. Bob-ombs will be the one exception to putting holes in the ground, so you can actually get through this in the most authentic way possible by having to time your throw. Next was Hoopster, and at first I didn't think there was a way to replicate this, but I discovered that you can pair a track, vine, and then a Buzzy Beetle. The effect works surprisingly well. Creating the vertical part of the stage was tricky because I had to keep adding doors or warp pipes to add to the vertical section. Now perhaps this could have been optimized a little better, but it's what I went with. For making the clouds, I just used the donut block so it looked different. The hardest part of all this though was making Birdo. Adding a sound effect to play the boss music was simple enough, but figuring out how to create the same attack pattern was really tricky. I knew that no matter what, I needed to stack a cannon on an enemy, because you could pick those cannonballs up and throw them just like the eggs. But which character to use that for was where I was having issues. I tried Bowser, but he was way too difficult. Hammer Bros just didn't seem right. Boom Boom, you could just step on him and he was dead, but that's assuming you got hit and are using normal Mario instead. And then there was Bowser Jr. He requires 3 hits to go down, and you basically have to hit him with cannons. It's much harder to just jump on him. But then there's the problem of him spitting fire, and he's just way too difficult for a beginner boss. So even though Boom Boom only takes 1 hit to go down, I figured I would save the Bowser Jr. boss for when Birdo actually does spit fire later in the game. I talked to Maybro about this for ideas, and she came up with this insane contraption with a cannon, track, ice block, and spinies. And while this is an extremely creative boss, it didn't really look or play like a Birdo fight. As someone that doesn't really make Mario Maker levels, 1-1 was very tough. But now that I figured out a lot of the assets, making levels was going a little bit faster. 1-2, however, adds a new enemy, Pidgeot, and I figured using Lekatu would be a perfect replacement. Well, for the most part. The cloud lasts way longer than Pidgeot's carpet, so I had to add a spike barrier so you couldn't cheese the level. The Bezos are a different story. There's not really an enemy like them besides Bullet Bills, and you can't spawn those off screen without a launcher, so I went with a flying Buzzy Beetle, which is kind of the same thing. You can jump on the beetles and they fly in a straightish path, so I suppose that does the trick. Next, you'll notice these doors. These are ways into the pot levels, which I put those somewhere else on this screen. The second pot is where you usually go to unlock the key door, but then I ran into a problem. Using a door doesn't take you to the second sub area. I was gonna have to use a pipe for that, so I added the pipe and some on and off blocks and put those in the pot area. But not having a key at all just didn't feel right, so I decided to still add the curse key, and it's now labeled as a hard mode for those that want some extra challenge. For every level with Phanto, there will now be an option to hit the on/off block or get a regular key, with a curse key right next to it for an optional challenge. Now that I was underground, I needed to replicate the snippets, and Spike was the best option. You may notice that I didn't add bob-ohms in every single spot like the game has, and through some beta testing, it wasn't really necessary, and some bob-ohm placements made the level a lot less fun. While not perfectly authentic, it made sense for this remake. At the end of the room, I made sure the platform was tall enough so you had to super jump since that's what Mario normally had to do, or you could use a Goomba for assistance. Moving on to 1-3, I was having so much trouble replicating Trouter. They were very hard to imitate. I initially tried using Cheep Cheeps, but their movement was completely different. Then I tried using Piranha Plants and flying Rocky Wrenches, which was more accurate, but also not really, and it also added the pipes, which just makes the whole thing look clunky. So I asked Maybro about this, and she came up with a genius idea. You start by taking a hard block, then stack a bob-omb and chain chomp underneath it. Then you make a track with the top side open and attach it to the hard block. Make another track, attach that to the bottom, then add a flying muncher, and you have yourself a Trouter. The bob-omb blows up the chain chomp and block, leaving you with a muncher that has a wooden peg on top of it that goes up and down. This is about as close as I imagine we'll ever get to replicating Trouter. You may have noticed that this pipe is missing due to a lack of doors that I can use, so I added an invisible block in the mushroom to make up for it. And besides, it's really just used to warp to World 4, and I really wish we could add warps because that would have been really cool. For the mushroom blocks, I decided to use springs, but the Koopa kept bouncing off them and getting launched down, so I had to replace one of the springs with a block instead. I also replaced Spark with sped up Spike Tops, which besides their slower speed is almost the same kind of enemy. I also wanted to create the crystal ball, but I couldn't really find anything to use, so I just put a cloud there instead. And yes, I'm gonna use the cloud for multiple different things to make the levels more authentic. Then for Mauser, I originally used a Mecha Koopa and a cannon with the bob-ohms attached, and I mean that kinda worked and he moved a little bit like Mauser, but the boss was way too easy. So with some help from Mayro, we found a better solution. Using a giant boom boom, a bob-omb cannon will slowly spit out bob-ohms, which I have to very carefully slide down this opening. Both of these boss ideas really aren't that authentic to Mauser, but it's the best thing we came up with. Man, and that was just World 1. I was getting used to scaling levels at this point, and the only challenge now is just recreating any new enemies that show up. As an example, 2-1 has enemies called Cobrats. I wanted to use something different from Koopas, so I decided I'd use dry bones. I really had no way of recreating these bone textures as well, so I just used basic blocks instead. I know it looks dumb, but again, I have very little assets to work with. There's also these platforms that you can pass through in the original game, so I figured I'd use donut blocks for these. Now for 1-3, I could have technically done the same thing with the caves and made those blocks donut blocks since you can pass through them, but they also fall if you stand on them for too long, so I really only want to use the donut platforms when necessary. Next was making the Panzer, and the best solution was a Hammer Bro. There is no Fire Bro in this game for some bizarre reason, so this was the best alternative. And I didn't have a way of making quicksand, but making the digging part was really fun, because I could actually replicate it perfectly. I love that you can do this with clouds. There's gonna be a lot of levels like this, I can already tell. I could have made this the underground theme for the correct music, but I felt the desert just looked a lot nicer and slightly more accurate. And that's the thing with recreating these levels, there is a lot of give and take with these things. 2-2 was a crippling one to make. Every pot in the original game lets you go down it into the bonus room, but I obviously can't do that for several pots. The first pot I replaced as a door so you can access it, but the other pots I just had to make into ice blocks since there were no other assets I could use. What's funny about adding the Pokey is that the sprite already looks like the one from Mario Bros. 2, even though this is the Mario Bros. 1 engine. Since 2-2 introduces the Red Birdo, it was time to start using the Bowser Jr. and Cannon combo, which makes the fights much harder. I did use springs as the mushroom blocks again, but unfortunately they don't hurt Birdo. 2-3's beginning vine needed to be split up, which looks a little awkward, but there wasn't much of a workaround. And honestly, I had to do things like this for a lot of the levels. Moving on to the underground segment, I had to cut this a little short. Normally after passing the orb, you go down this long hallway and go inside the mouth, but since I had to make this in the vertical sub area, I didn't want to make another door just to go down that hallway, so cutting that out seemed more practical. Triclyde was a lot easier to replicate than I expected. Since he's usually stationary, I just added some springs to make sure that he stays in that general area. I couldn't use the springs as mushroom blocks, so I opted with cannonballs that launch up as a replacement. Larry shoots lasers in a very similar pattern to Triclyde, so this seemed like the best combo. Going into 3-1, I decided to use the sky theme since most of the level is in the sky. The blocks don't look the same, but I figured a change of pace is a good idea. Recreating the clouds with the donuts was really time consuming since I had to make sure to get all these alignments correct. With 3-1, I was able to keep the secret door that's at the bottom of the waterfall. Normally going through that door takes you through a warp if you use the potion in the right place, but since we can't warp and I don't want to soft lock anyone, I instead added a pipe that allows you to bypass the cloud climbing section. I was also able to add the hidden door, which is a bit of a shortcut to Birdo. I made sure to make it pretty hard to reach, and it requires a precise jump with the springs. Also, throwing the springs at the Hammer Bros is a lot more fun than I thought it would be. Now, normally 3-2 has you going back and forth between the sub area multiple times, and honestly, I never found that fun in the original game. So instead, I put the top and bottom layers of 3-2 onto one screen with a few sacrifices. By adding a little extra stage to the beginning and end, I was able to mostly recreate the stage. For the yellow dirt, I've been using blocks, but since there's a top and bottom portion displayed at the same time, I opted with question mark blocks just to differentiate them a little bit better. As for the Shy Guys riding the Ostros, I found that stacking a Monimole on top of a Koopa did the job pretty well. The biggest problem with this stage was missing bob-omb throws. At the bottom layer, there's 4 breakable walls you have to go through, and if you mess up the throws, there's not really a way to try again unless you restart. So in the sand portion, I made an alternate route that you can take that is usually close to impossible to make in the original. The route itself is the same, except the big hole now has ground underneath it. The only bob-omb throws you really have to worry about is this wall at the end, so for anyone struggling, you can easily hold a bob-omb and damage boost through it and grab another mushroom afterwards. For the Porky pose, I went with Spinies, which I know are way slower, but I didn't really know what else I could do. 3-3 was a colossal undertaking, and I'm shocked I even fit this whole stage in one level. The reason for that is there's multiple doors, and I had to make a couple sacrifices, but it actually plays almost exactly like the originals. I had to squeeze all the horizontal segments into the first area, and the vertical ones into the second. This is mostly fine, but this room that normally has 3 doors wasn't able to fit into the correct underground theme. but amazingly, I was able to scale everything almost the same and include all the same doors. Since this room with the 3 doors were now using pipes that allowed me to use those extra doors towards areas that were more important. For the potted Shy Guys, I figured using a sideways pipe that spawns Koopas would do the trick. I've already talked about replacing Spark with the spike tops, but they have this bizarre pattern in the key room where they just kind of move around at the top sporadically, so I put them on a conveyor belt to imitate this, and the effect is similar, except one of the spike tops knocks one of them off after a while. I'm not really sure how else I could replicate this. I guess I could use tracks as well, but hey, it's close enough. Counting out the ice blocks in 4-1 was pretty straining on my eyes, but it was nothing compared to what I just made. Remaking the flurries was also pretty easy. I just used Monty moles and their patterns were similar enough. The rocket was actually pretty fun to recreate too. I simply have a bonsai bill spawn in place, and you just stand at the top and go through this pipe to reach the other half of this level. And then there's the auto bombs, which I replaced with Monty moles and Koopa Troopas. And yes, I know I already used this for the Ostros, but they both behave in very similar ways, and I don't know what else I can do. Now, there's not much to say about 4-2, but I love how derpy I made the whales look. I just used blocks for the body and tail and a donut block for the eyeball. The whales usually spurt water, and my only idea was to add a track with a buzzy beetle. 4-3's underground sections were very time consuming, and I was really conflicted on if I should use ice blocks or donut blocks for the platforms. And well, I decided to go with a bit of both. I swapped these blocks around while playtesting and just went with what was the most fun. Now, Fry Guy was really stupid to make, because there is no way that I can think of where I can hit this guy while also making him split into pieces. So I decided to use Iggy, and I stacked a bomb cannon on him that spits fire. The idea is to use a spring to knock the cannon off of him, which I guess you could count as a hit. Then you step on him 3 times to imitate the smaller Fry Guys. If anyone comes up with something better, then let me know so I can update this boss, because what I have is probably my worst recreation out of everything I made. 5-1's level was pretty easy to complete, although I needed to figure out the boss fight. It's Birdo once again, but the one in the original only spits fire, so I figured my best option was to just use Bowser since you can't step on him, and you have to throw cannonballs to defeat him. I'm actually pretty happy with my variations of Birdo because they all have distinct difficulties, which is really nice, especially since I can put all these levels into a world as a full game. 5-2 was more of the same thing, although I needed to make some trees with Hoopster, so I used tracks without the vines. It looks stupid, but it's functional. 5-3 had Albatos with Bob-Ohms, and the only decent substitute I could use was Lekatu that throws Bob-Ohms. It's not really the same thing since the Lekatu chase you around, but it was close enough. The underground section was annoying because I didn't have space for the potted Shy Guys, so I just added a Koopa Troopa where they usually spawn. The platforms also all needed to be passed through, so I had to use donut blocks, which makes the level easier than usual. But I did include the mushroom blocks as clouds for a bit more authenticity. Claw Grip was really hard to imitate, and what I did was put Bowser Jr. in a boxed room with a big cannon. By throwing the big cannonballs, you have to hit Bowser Jr. when he's not spinning for it to count. I also added the clouds behind him to replicate the rocks that are usually sitting there. It's not perfect, but it's not bad either. 6-1 was fairly easy, up until we went underground. That's because there's a dozen pipes that you're supposed to be able to go into, but obviously we can't do that. So instead, I added 2 of the unique ones, since the main pipe looks the same as the one from the other sub area. And yep, this looks really stupid just having some ice blocks and 2 doors in place, but blame Mario Maker 2 for limiting us on doors, not me. 6-2 was very obnoxious to make because I couldn't really use my Albatos substitute. Using the Lekatus would make this level, well, not feel like this level at all. So for this one instance, I decided to replace the Albatos with bonsai bills so you have to jump off of them just like you do in the actual game. And this actually makes 6-2 quite tricky, but I did double check that you can beat this as normal Mario just in case you lose the suit for whatever reason. For 6-3, I found a sneaky way to keep the shortcut at the beginning by using 1 layer of donut blocks and having to mash your way through. I imagine everyone is going to do this that knows about this shortcut instead of playing the level normally, but I wanted to have both options. Now 7-1 mostly functions the same, but the cloud part is unfortunately completely broken. The donut blocks make the cloud section super easy to cheese, but I really had no other option. And I couldn't really use regular clouds because that would make this even easier, but what else can you do, right? And finally, we have 7-2. Look at the size of this map. No, seriously, look at it. I want to let you know that making most of these levels took around 1 to 4 hours to complete. 7-2 took almost 8 hours. It is so stupidly complicated, and despite that, I actually managed to fit most of it in here. The main thing that I had to cut out was the last 2 boss fights, and some of the themes aren't going to be correct. So to combat that, I just made the entire thing lava themed. If you've never played 7-2 before, this level is a doozy if you don't know which doors to take, and I was only able to add 2 checkpoints, which honestly isn't enough for something this massive. Now, in order to make this happen, I was able to combine together a few rooms that were already close together, and this allowed me to save a few doors. The other small difference is that I couldn't add the pipes at the beginning for the Shy Guys due to space, but besides that, this is mostly the same level. But of course, we have the boss fights. For the bird, I just use a giant boom boom. I tried attaching cannons to him, but then I realized that the actual bird didn't have that, so I added a cannon if you wanted to beat him authentically, but let's be honest, most of you are just gonna step on him. And for Wart, I made a giant Bowser and also added a bullet bill cannon for a little more difficulty. The only way you can beat him is to use cannonballs, and you have to be careful not to get too close or you'll get trapped inside and have to retry. I will say that this fight is somewhat similar to fighting Wart, and it's also pretty cool that I'm able to add Wart's music to the fight as well. And there you have it. That was my recreation of Super Mario Bros. 2. I feel like about 80% of my levels are faithful, and the other 20% isn't at all. This is truly a bootleg version of Mario Bros. 2. Super Mario Maker 2 has currently added one additional game style, which is surprisingly enough Super Mario 3D World. Looking closer at the Mario Maker 2 Direct, we can see that this icon showing all the styles says Extra Game Styles, which is plural, implying that we'll likely get more in the future. I've been thinking about which game Nintendo could use as DLC, and since Mario 3D World is technically a 3D title, we're given a lot more options now. So I've completed a tier list of what I think could be DLC, S tier being most likely and F tier least likely. We'll just go from the oldest to newest games, starting with Super Mario Bros. 2. This is one that I honestly thought they were going to add, but now I can kind of see why they wouldn't and why it's even less likely now. The key difference is that the only playable characters we know of are Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Toadette, while this game has Princess Peach. They would have to swap Toadette with Peach, which could work, but it'd be a bit strange to see her scrapped entirely. Another key feature to Mario Bros. 2 is each character has different abilities, like Peach could float and Toad could run fast, while all the characters in Mario Maker 2 function exactly the same. With that said though, they did take the different stats out for the Mario 3D World engine, so in that regard it wouldn't be that much of a stretch for them to do that here too. I've also seen the argument that the gameplay from this game is just too different for this to work. But 3D World isn't even a 2D game, and that one's included. A lot of the same elements that are in Mario games are also in this too. They wouldn't need to add that many extra things like themes, enemies, etc. So for this, I'm gonna put it at B tier. Next is Super Mario Land, and honestly, I think this has a really good chance of making it in. I'm gonna put it at S tier. This is one of those cherished but forgotten Mario games that I think has a lot of cool elements that could be brought to the spotlight. For starters, you can drive a freaking plane and submarine, which in a way kind of pairs with the driving in Mario 3D World. Plus, the fireballs work very differently, seeing as they bounce all over the place instead of just on the ground. And the art style and physics engine is different enough to warrant it its own art style. The music in Mario Land is fantastic too, so I'd love to hear similar sounding pieces with any new themes that would need to be added. Mario Land also has different bosses, and even though they were really easy before, it'd be neat to see a few of them thrown in as a replacement for Boom Boom, Bowser Jr., and Bowser. But what also seems pretty likely is its successor, Super Mario Land 2. While it looks and plays similarly to Super Mario World, the game still has its own unique flavor. The levels are held in really dynamic areas like Tree Zone, Space Zone, Macro Zone, and even Mario Zone where you go inside Mario's crotch. Plus there's the bunny power-up which lets Mario float for as long as you can mash A, which is kinda similar to the Tanuki Leaf, but it also isn't at the same time. The zones all have really neat elements to them, like the Tree Zone has this sticky sap that you have to kind of crawl through. Plus the enemies in this game are so ridiculous looking. It would be fantastic to see a bunch of variety in that department. I'd be down with Nintendo including either Mario Land 1 or 2. Both would be a treat. I guess I should also play Super Mario All-Stars somewhere, even though it wouldn't really make sense considering this game is just remakes of the classics. I'll put it in D tier just because the sprite work and music is different, but this one is extremely unlikely to happen. I also don't see much of a chance for Yoshi's Island either. It barely counts as a Mario game since you play as Yoshi, but the game is still a classic with Mario Bros. 1, 3, and World, so for that reason alone, I'll put it in D tier. Maybe the baby he carries around could be Baby Luigi, or Baby Toad/Toadette. The levels in that game are beautiful and have a lot of the same Mario Maker elements like the red coins and key doors. But like I said, I'm not getting my hopes up on it, even though this one would be pretty sick. Now we're dipping into the next generation of Mario with Super Mario 64, and I think this game style has a 50-50 chance. For one, Mario 64 is Mario's first 3D adventure, and if Mario Maker is celebrating all these different game styles, then it seems out of place for this not to be there. But I don't think there's that much of a desire to force Mario 64 into a 2D plane since its moves feel so nice because of the 3D. Wall jumps would be a pain since you have to time them just right, and moves like crawling or the slide kick wouldn't be very useful. But on the other hand, we have things like diving and long jumping, which would definitely be fun in 2D, and pair that with a wing cap, metal cap, and vanish cap, and you have yourself a compelling and different game style compared to the others. I'm just very split if I think this makes sense, so I'm putting it at C tier, but it's very close to B, honestly. So after that is Mario Sunshine, and frankly, I think this game has a better chance than Mario 64 just because of the Flood Pack. It would be a lot more work for the developers, sure, but imagine how drastically different Mario Sunshine levels would feel from the others. It would be so cool. Mario Sunshine is another game that also has a ton of new enemies that'd be fun to include with the others, and the art style still looks great to this day. This might seem ballsy, but Mario Sunshine is going in A tier just because of the mechanics, but not S since the developers would need to create a lot of new background themes and music, which would definitely be a lot of work. I might as well bring up new Super Mario Bros. DS, Wii, and 2 just to throw those suckers into F tier. I made a really dumb joke on Twitter about all these games being their own game styles, but obviously they play almost the same as Mario Bros. U, so this won't happen. I wouldn't mind seeing power-ups like the Koopa Shell or the Mega Mushroom getting added, but nothing beyond the power-ups. Next, we have Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. Now, this is one that I personally wouldn't really want to see get implemented, but I could definitely see it happening. Mario loses some of his older moves in Mario Galaxy, but he also grants a spin jump and can climb up the edges of walls quicker. On top of that, it'd be kinda nice to be able to play with the gravity and use things like pull stars and star bits. We did see a couple of levels that played in 2D in Mario Galaxy 2, so this really isn't out of the question. It'd be even better if we got a bunch of the power-ups like the Bee Mushroom, Cloud Flower, Spring Mushroom, and things like that. So I'm gonna put both of the Galaxy titles in A tier since there's lots of new and interesting elements and a huge bevy of themes they can use from the get-go. I know Super Mario 3D Land won't happen because of 3D World, but once again, I may as well play it on the list where it belongs, right in the F. There's pretty much nothing I'd even want to see get brought over from 3D Land because almost all of those features are already in 3D World. And finally, we have Super Mario Odyssey, and I gotta be honest, this has to go in the B tier. That's simply because I don't think Nintendo is quite done with Odyssey. A sequel to the game is pretty likely, or at least there's gonna be some form of DLC. And because of that, it would be a strange conflict of interest for them to include such a new game style into a level editor, considering the developers are probably still coming up with brand new ideas. But I could be wrong, and Nintendo will just let us make 2D levels and transform into all the characters our hearts desire. And honestly, it would make for some really dynamic levels. I can already envision a brick wall blocking your path as an example, and you have to transform into the tank to shoot it down or something along the lines of that. Now I've decided we should probably bring up Paper Mario since Super Paper Mario is a thing. This series of games are obviously not your standard platformer, but a lot of the art and assets would fit right into Mario Maker 2. Plus, using the hammer as a more standard move could be a lot of fun, and I'd love to play as Paper Luigi and the Paper Toads as well. There's already plenty of themes and enemies, so the devs wouldn't need to create that many new assets for this to work. If Nintendo wants to surprise us, they'll pull this game out as DLC, but but I don't think it stands much of a chance, which is why I'm putting it in C tier. Now, obviously, we can't touch every coin in Super Mario Maker. There's only a bajillion levels, with more being added every day. But what about a set of courses that everyone can play, like the event courses? That's what we'll be doing today. We're going to go through all 46 levels and see which ones lets us get every coin and which don't. Like usual, blocks without coins do not matter. Even if we hit a P-switch and a bunch of coins spawn in, if they weren't originally there, we can avoid them. And the same goes for the infinitely spawning coins, those don't count either. On to our first challenge level. We'll go from the bottom to top and we're gonna start with Ship Love. This one was going okay at first until I entered the ghost house the second time. There's 5 sets of question blocks, each with 10 coins in them. Now, firstly, when you get close to the 2 sets on the left, a thwomp hits them. This makes it nearly impossible for us to get all 10 coins because the thwomp hits the block early and we're on a strict timer to hit all the coins, which we simply can't get to. The other 3 blocks next to it are put in really obnoxious spots. There is no way you can get all 10 of the coins out of these either. Sure, you can hit them a couple of times, but trying to do that with 2 swinging fire bars and the tiny cannon platform isn't very useful. So this first level isn't possible. Next is new Arena Maker, and we have a bunch of cannons that shoot infinitely spawning coins that we don't have to worry about. But our big problem is this giant 12, because all of these question mark blocks have coins in them. And since we're in the Mario Bros. 1 engine, we can't pick up Koopas to hit the blocks or anything like that. I went ahead and downloaded the level just to double check that there were coins in them, and sure enough, I was right. But alas, Arena Maker Returns actually returned us a favor because all the coins here were doable. The level itself is kinda crappy, simply because it just isn't that fun to play. And now to the last arena level. It seemed like this was doable until I got to this maze-like part with all the Koopa Troopas. There's a question mark block at the bottom left and you're supposed to use the Koopa to get these coins. After playing through the level, I went back to count the coins I got from that block and it was only 8 out of the 10. I tried a strategy where I basically built up a few Koopas at the top and then released them through the maze back to back. In doing this, I was able to barely get 9 out of the 10 coins. So while this is better, I'm not sure if I can optimize the Koopas any more than I did there, so unless there's some other way, this level isn't possible. In the Triforce Heroes level, the coins weren't much of an issue except for a bunch of 10 coin blocks near the beginning. At first, I killed off all the Goombas so I could get these coins without them getting in the way, but for the bottom row, I could only get 8 of the 10 coins from each block. So I tried again and used the Goombas to my advantage by bouncing off them for the first 2 hits to improve my speed. Doing this, I got 9 out of the 10 coins, so even then it still wasn't fast enough. But it seemed pretty close, so I kept trying it, and this was my best attempt. I feel like that was pretty optimized, and still only got 9 coins from both. So unfortunately, here's another level that we can't do. Next was the Super Mario Kun 25th Anniversary level, and this excited me because we're finally using the new Super Mario Bros. Engine, which will utilize ground pounding to help with blocks and the propeller mushroom for traveling. And then we ran into this giant sea. While we could hit all the blocks on the outside, there was no way to destroy the ones on the inside. It's too bad the clown car isn't the fire-breathing one, since that can blow up blocks, but all we have access to is the normal clown car. This level straight up clowned us. After that was Cat Peach's level, and I gotta say, I'm blown away that an official event course is genuine garbage and not actual gameplay. There's not a lot of coins here, but it makes up for that for the random barrage of enemies. After several tries, I eventually figured out that there's stars you can grab, and after getting a hold of those and knocking out all the enemies, I was able to get all the coins. Of all the levels, I'm shocked that this one was possible. And the same goes for Cat Mario's course. It was incredibly easy and doable with not much to say. Now for this Yoshi is Awesome level, I gotta praise it for its ingenious creativity. You're supposed to keep Yoshi alive at all times while he's running on his own, which is pretty awesome. What isn't awesome is after about 30 seconds, I realized we aren't getting all the coins. At one point, you need to hit a P-switch to turn all these coins into blocks so Yoshi can get across. But after you do that, there's no way to grab them afterwards. So this is another level that isn't doable. At this point, I was getting frustrated at how few levels were possible, but I had no idea that we were about to encounter a huge win streak. Starting with PAX West 2015 Omegathon Final Road, there was almost no coins to collect, outside of the infinite spawning ones coming from the Lekatu. In NES Remix, Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, Mercedes-Benz Jump and Drive, Mario Hills, Nintendo Badge Arcade, Belch Base, Welcome to Saturn Valley, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, NES Remix Super Mario Bros. 2, and NES Remix Excite Bike were all a breeze to play through. So we just had a nice long win streak there. But then came Southwest Air Adventure. This one was really annoying, starting with this section where you can find a group of coins surrounded by a few spikes. Trying to jump around these spikes while not getting hit and avoiding the Koopa was a pain in the butt and took quite a few tries to get down. But then I went ahead and bit and saw a huge row of coins at the very bottom of the stage. You're supposed to use a P-switch to travel from door to door, but we have no way of grabbing this row of coins, so this level isn't happening. But fear not, because Ku, featuring Yamamura, was really pretty painless, and the same goes for Adventure in Sarasaland and Paranormal Research. Next, we have 4 contest courses from Tokaiji 2016, and the first level of this was really fun and really easy to grab every coin. The second level went okay until I got to the end. There's another long row of coins on the very bottom of the screen that we can't reach. The third level went pretty well, and so did the fourth one, wrapping up all the contest courses. Up next was I Choose You, which is of course a Pokemon themed course. The first store I chose was Charmander, and he completely ruined it for us. His entire sculpture looks cool, but it's all made out of question mark blocks, which we can't hit. Come on, Charmander. You really gotta do this to me? Following this is a level name I don't even want to try to pronounce, but it has 2 different paths you can take for this one, and both of them let you get all the coins. The next level with a similar name also had a split path. I tried going left and ran into a bunch of question mark blocks. Like a lot of previous levels, it's impossible for me to hit question mark blocks that are surrounded by other blocks, so this level is also a no-go. Within 10 seconds of Barbara and Tomatoland, it was already confirmed not possible, as there's a huge row of coins at the bottom of the screen with no way of getting them all. And the level right after that has the exact same problem. Another giant row of coins we can't grab. Next was Mario O's Lunch Break, and it was a pretty simple level to knock out. The same goes for Twilight Princess HD as well as Toadette Treasure Tracker. For the Yu Ayasaki's Big Adventure course, it went really well until the end. I mean, literally after the flagpole. You'll see a bunch of coins shaped out like a heart that I needed to grab, but even with a well-timed jump, I was always grabbing the top of the flagpole, missing all the coins entirely. But thankfully, Starfy, Prince of Puff Top's level was really easy, and the same goes for Metal Resistance and Popo and Nana's Climbing Challenge. After that was Hello Kitty and My Melody, and it seemed like the level would be okay until I entered a door to find Hello Kitty art with coins trapped inside. So obviously, this level isn't happening. But afterwards was Sean's Mossy Mole Mischief, and it was an incredibly obnoxious level due to all the bouncing donuts, but you can get all the coins. Next was Squid Sisters vs. Bloopers. It all went perfectly fine until the end. Of course, there just had to be a giant Firefin logo that, guess this, had a bunch of question blocks you can't hit. But at least the walk-in with Undo Dog level was really simple. Getting all these coins were a cakewalk. And Dr. Kawashima's athletic training was going okay, but of course we were stopped by blocks we just aren't allowed to hit in the Mario Bros. 1 engine. Admittedly, it's funny that this structure is shaped like a headless guy that you can put the doc's head on, but come on. And finally, on to the last level. It's from the Nintendo World Championships held in 2017. This was an extremely fun level, and believe it or not, all the coins here were actually possible to grab. So there you have it. That's all the event course levels completed. Of the 46, 30 were possible and 16 were not. I'm pretty surprised at how many we couldn't complete. It really made me realize that Super Mario Maker levels really weren't built for collecting coins. They're built purely as levels to run through and nothing beyond that. Which does make sense because coins don't really have a value in this game. Originally, I was thinking of making a video on getting all the coins in Super Mario Maker 2's story mode. I even made the thumbnail ahead of time. But then I actually played the story and realized it wouldn't really make for an interesting video considering the levels rules are so specific and wouldn't allow me to get creative. Then I came to another idea. What is the most coins you could possibly earn in Super Mario Maker 2? And when I say that, I mean in just one level. I wanted to test the boundaries and push this idea as far as I could. So first things first was deciding the game style, and what I was looking for was a reliable and easy to use moveset. So I chose New Super Mario Bros. Because wall jumping is quick and easy, and his spin jump is a bit more beneficial than the one in Mario 3D World. Next was figuring out the most efficient way to collect coins, and there was a lot of options. You can put a coin in a note block and get 1 out of that, and of course putting coins in bricks gives you 10, but we have much better choices. I tried attaching coins to Lekatu and found that he throws 30 and then runs away afterwards. That's a pretty solid amount of coins from one enemy, but the coins spread all over the place and it isn't consistent with where he'll go, so he's not that practical. Then I attached a coin to a bullet bill launcher, and that also gave me 30. These coins came out in a more straight line, but it was still a bit tricky to grab them. Then I tried red pipes, and again received 30 coins, but these spewed out the least frantically. So now I'm gonna show you guys my first draft. My method was basically surrounding myself with the coin pipes, and in between were more coins floating in the air. In case you're wondering why I chose the red pipes, well, that's because objects spawn out of that color the fastest, so it was an obvious pick. I also added as many 50 coins as I could, but the limit per level was just 5. So this is what I did for the beginning. I stacked up red pipes as high as I could and even used a one-way wall to let myself in and ensure coins wouldn't escape. After all the coins finally left the pipes, I took the top warp pipe to the other part of the level, and as you can see, I decided to use the new vertical layout to my advantage. This let me add way more pipes, and I thought this was the fastest method. The problem that I realized later is that it was way too easy to miss coins. This wall was so tall that coins would just vanish if I spawned them in. I literally couldn't move fast enough to get every single one, even when they were all so close. And that wasn't the only issue. I had to keep wall jumping back up to get coins from the pipes because they only spawn in segments of 10 when you're close by. So ultimately, I realized this layout wasn't gonna work and decided to try something else. For my next attempt, instead of making my path vertically based, I changed it to be more horizontal. This was done so that I could more easily run back and forth and get all the coins this way without missing any. I made sure to not lay down more than 7 or 8 pipes in a row so that Mario would have time to run back and forth and grab them all before they disappeared. And if the coins disappeared, you couldn't get them back, so I needed to be really careful and steady with my movement. After that, I would wall jump up a short path where half of it was pipes and the other half was just normal ground. I had to do this to make sure I wouldn't spawn in new coins too early and to give myself enough time to grab them all. I also added this one-way wall to make sure coins would once again not fall. So after this segment, I go through this pipe and into the other half of the level, and as you can see, it's looking pretty similar. I once again went with a vertical layout, and it was a lot easier because I didn't have to worry about coins running too far away, considering the wall sealed the left side. After getting all the coins on the ground, I had to wall jump again, and there was a few pipes that didn't get activated, so with well-timed wall jumps, I could get these pretty quickly. And even if I missed any, I just had to quickly ground pound to the bottom and I could nab any missed coins. With this method, I was able to create 5 of these sections. Now, why only 5, you might be asking? This vertical level would certainly allow us to go taller than that. Well, the game actually told me to stop. I went to the absolute limit with coins in the pipes. So after that, I went back to the lava part of the level and recreated that exact same segment, but could only do 2 of these segments at a time. This is where things started to get really complicated, because I was starting to have to worry more and more about my time limit. Now, I did stretch my timer out to the maximum, which is 500, but after I was done getting all the coins from the pipes, almost half of my time was gone. That's when I realized I needed to use the vertical layout to my advantage. Warping back to the grassy level, I have a door right next to a pipe and immediately took the door. This led me to the edge of this level, and as you can see, I have columns upon columns of coins ready to be collected. All I had to do here was wall jump as fast as I could, and then when I got to the top, I'd simply ground pound to the bottom and repeat. I also added 5 pink coins here too, since those also count towards my overall total. The reason I had to do this was because I was trying to max out my coin coin limit, and it was taking forever to get the coins at this point. By basically lining the coins up in straight lines, that seemed to be the quickest way to grab them all since wall jumping and ground pounding is relatively fast. I thought about using a propeller suit to speed this process a bit, but I realized he couldn't wall jump after doing his big spin, so that was out of the question. I guess I could have added a bunch of one-sided walls so Propeller Mario could land, but I figured wall jumping in succession is just about as fast. So after adding this enormous amount of coins, I literally collected as many as the game would allow me since I wasn't able to add anymore. After that, I basically had to run back to the beginning. Looking back at this, I probably could have added a door to save a little bit of time so I didn't have to backtrack so much, but in the long scheme of things, it really didn't take that long. Regardless, I was back at the beginning of the lava level, and my next step was to max out the coin counter in the coins and pipes here since I could still do that. Upon going through this door, you're gonna notice I'm running for what seems like months just getting dozens upon dozens of coins. Like I did for the vertically based level, I used the horizontal reach to my advantage here too. There's two stretches of paths like this with coins, and then I had to wall jump on the left. I did this for a very specific reason, because now that I'm up here, you'll see another row of coin pipes. I needed to ensure that these pipes were high enough in the level so they wouldn't spawn while I couldn't reach them. So since I had to make them a certain height, it only made sense to run on the sides as far as I could to get a bunch of these coins out of the way. So after getting coins from these pipes and wall jumping up, I go through another door. That door leads me to another pathway with even more coins, and above that was about 6 coin pipes. This is probably obvious by now, but I only have that many because I finally maxed out on coin pipes. I did have to raise the pipes higher than I wanted, but when testing this out, I was having issues with the coins spawning when I wasn't even close to them, so I had to raise the pipes up to prevent that from happening. But after getting all the coin pipes, the rest of the level was just creating as many horizontal paths as I possibly could. And if you've been watching the timer, it's really starting to get down to the wire. So after more running through paths, I took another door, which was my final straightaway for coins. At the end of this is the exit, but of course I had to add the last 5 pink coins, and with that I was able to finish with 11 seconds left. So with this level, I was able to completely max out all the coins I could add, as well as the pink coins, the 50 coins, and coins from the pipes. The only way I could even imagine adding additional coins is to use a P-switch and some brick blocks. But quite frankly, I don't know where I would put those two things and if the hassle of adding them would even be worth it, considering how much of a time crunch my route is to begin with. But now comes the fun part, actually adding all of these coins. We'll start with the easy numbers. The maximum pink coins we could include were 5 per screen, so that's a total of 10. Before adding the others, I went back and double checked the maximum amount of coin pipes I could add, and while I was doing that, I realized something that changed everything into some sort of glitch. Let me show you what I mean. As you can see, I'm copying these coin pipes over and over, just adding them, but when I try to manually add a coin to a pipe, it won't let me. So it seems like I've encountered some sort of coin duplication glitch by complete accident. I'm not sure why this happens, but knowing that this method exists, I could probably grab even more coins with a new level. So at this point, I recounted by only adding in the coin pipes, and I found that I could create 200 pipes, which totals out to 6,000 coins. And this is just one screen, so you can apply this to the other one, and that gives us 12,000 coins from just the pipes. I had to go back and check my original level and manually counted how many pipes I used in the lava section, and that was only 102, and that maxed out according to the game. So I thought my work was done, but really, it just began. It was time to start fresh and recreate this level and optimize it to its fullest potential. My game plan is to make a level first and foremost with only the coin pipes to make sure I can fit in all 200. After adding all those, then I can throw in the pink coins, then the 10 coins since that's all that was allowed at this point, and the remainder of the regular coins. So by adding up the 10 pink coins, the 10 coins, the coin pipes, and the regular coins, we have a grand total of 16,110 coins to be collected. So my final build is looking fairly similar to what I had before. About 7 or 8 pipes laid out horizontally, then wall jump up to the next section of that. The biggest change is in the vertical part of the level. First off, the pipe section goes up way higher since I was able to include the actual maximum amount with this glitch. Then I made sure to utilize all the doors that I possibly could because I was going to be doing a lot more ground pounding with the columns of coins. As you can see, every time I go into a door, I spawn at the top and just have to ground pound to the bottom. I only only have to wall jump up this column 1 time instead of 3. This alone saves a considerable amount of time. You probably also noticed that I added tracks with stars on them, because you run a little bit faster when you're invincible. So for most of this level now, I'm going to be using stars to increase my movement speed, and I'm hoping it's going to help enough because all these additional pipes is going to make this extremely difficult to complete. And now was the time. After spending dozens of hours rebuilding this level over and over again, I feel confident that we can barely grab all the coins. I made attempt after attempt. I was constantly retrying if I didn't play near perfectly. With all this practice, it got to a point where I had a good run going. Everything was going well. I was starting to figure out when pipes would stop spewing coins so I could move through at exhilarating speeds, and my movement was getting more and more polished. And then it got down to the last 15 seconds. And there you have it. I was successfully able to collect 16,110 coins before the timer went out, with 2 seconds to spare. You can actually see that I did this by looking at my high score afterwards. All regular coins are worth 100 points, so by ignoring the first 2 zeros, the final score was 16,470. It's a little over because the 10 coins increase the score a little bit. Now, I'd love to see you guys attempt this level yourself, but because of the coin duplication glitch, Nintendo actually won't allow me to upload or even save this level. You are welcome to try to improve the coin count. I'd love to see other ways you can improve this if that's at all possible.
Warning. The following video is over-exaggerated. Some opinions shared aren't accurate to my thoughts and views, so don't lose your coins about this. You can play on the title screen, but the logo's in the way. Even if I time it right, I can't get fireworks when I touch the flagpole. Spin-off game or not, saving Peach is the plot. Again. Some of my amiibo aren't compatible with Mario Maker. I can't use the costumes in all the Mario engines, just the first one. Where's the slopes? Oh, wait a minute, they're in the Smash Bros stage. Thanks, Nintendo. Those levels where you just get a billion power-ups and that's it. Another recreation of World 1-1? Give me a break. Stupidly difficult levels. Like, come on, this isn't fun. Auto levels were cool for like 5 minutes. When you're trying to get a power-up from a block, but you just get an enemy. The 3DS port. You know, the one where you can't share your levels worldwide. I can make 2D levels, but not 3D? This has to be the only Mario game where 98% of the levels are just trash. Thanks, humans. Their search system is so backwards. Instead of searching for a name or something like that, no, I gotta type in a 50 million thousand password. Those levels that kill you almost instantly when you start. I wasn't able to use all the pieces to make levels right away. Those pixel art levels are cool, but rarely fun to play. Unlocking all the costumes is an insane task. You have to play hundreds of user levels, which most of them are unfair or just crudely difficult. I can play as a Mercedes-Benz car? Are you serious? Kitty White from Hello Kitty? What's next? Mickey Mouse, Goku, Clippy from Microsoft Word? Shaun the Sheep? What? The Brain Age? I can't do this anymore. Why is there shadows behind everything? It looks so tacky. Did Nintendo not realize Mega Man already had an 8-bit sprite? I thought squids didn't like the water. I can't add lava tiles. Mario puzzle levels are cool, but some just go way too far. If your courses don't get a bunch of stars, Nintendo straight up deletes it. 1-ups are completely worthless since there's no true story mode or whatever. Unless you play expert mode. But still. Entering a door that kills you instantly. Why can't I make a snow level, or desert, or forest? Super expert mode. I'm not good enough to unlock it. Those levels that just show off somebody's amiibo collection. Man, they had the opportunity to include like every power-up. But no, they had like 5 or something. There's no multiplayer mode. Wait, actually, that's fine. I mean, hey, New Super Mario Bros. Proved that multiplayer doesn't really work that well. The invisible block traps are not only more common, but almost always come with that laughing sound effect. Levels that actually are impossible, and what you're supposed to do is take some hidden block with some vine, you climb up to some pipe, and then you get to the end that way. When you're just sitting there and playing Mario Maker, and it's fun at first, you find a few stinkers, but the levels overall are pretty cool. Then you keep playing, and the levels just keep trolling you. Death to an invisible block, death to lava, death to spikes, death to a Goomba, death to whatever that was. Then you just think, I just need practice. So you play more and more, but you slowly fall into a deep depression and just keep flicking the skip button, struggling to make any progress on expert mode. You tell yourself to just get good, but it doesn't happen. And the worst part is that it's not your fault. Most of the levels are set up to troll you. That's just what people have created. Then you realize there's nothing you can do but hope you don't get bad levels. And after getting fooled by the most random and impossible things and die 100 times in a row, you turn the game off and never want to touch it again for how bullshit the game is. You know, some people say that Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels is the hardest Mario game of all time. Well, those people are wrong. I'm holding it right now. It's Super Mario Maker. It's unfair. It's bad. Go away!
It's still crazy to think that a lifelong dream of mine came true. I remember fantasizing as a kid about how cool it'd be to be able to make your own Mario levels, and it's actually a thing now. I know ROM hacks have existed for years, but this is different, okay? So let's get into this. Here is why Super Mario Maker is mind-blowing. In 3, 2, 1.
Super Mario Maker!
So this is basically the only game that works perfectly with the Wii U gamepad. I know this is obvious, but Super Mario Maker is a never-ending Mario game. Just take that in for a second and you'll realize how awesome that really is. You can make your own levels with not just the Mario Bros. 1 style, but also 3, World, and New. Okay, off topic, but calling the modern Mario games new is really starting to make less and less sense. Every style has the same physics from their counterparts, making for different feeling Mario levels, depending on which game style you choose. The amount of customization available is insane. Like, I don't even know where to begin. So there's tons and tons of assets you can use. There's lots of different enemies and blocks with varying textures and interactivity. You can also set up warp pipes and doors to take you to a different section of your level. And don't worry, the dream of putting giant flying Koopa Troopas and question mark blocks is finally fulfilled. You can put pretty much anything in these blocks. It gets crazier though. Adding feathers or a mushroom to the enemies makes them larger and lets them fly. Shaking some enemies will change them too, like you can change Bowser to Bowser Jr. if you wanted. And you can stack enemies on top of each other. God damn, this game has it all. Nintendo went out of their way to create a ghost and airship backdrop and music for Mario Bros. 1 just so it could fit with the newer games. Whenever you add something to your level, there's a cool little jingle that syncs with the song playing in the background. If you like sound effects, there's plenty to choose from. So when you throw in that troll invisible box, you can also include the laughing sound now. I also hate you. There's tons of unlockable characters in the Mario Bros. 1 engine. Some of them can even be scanned in with Amiibo. The selection is really out there too, like there's a Mahjong tile, Dr. Lob from Big Brain Academy, Mr. Saturn from Earthbound, and a bird. I'm not kidding, a freaking bird. You can even interact with the main menu. Like if you touch the letter K, it turns the whole screen into a sepia tone and is accompanied with an 8-bit variation of the song. It's completely unnecessary, but I love this extra touch. Finally, the Goomba shoe can appear in more than one level. I'm looking at you, Mario Bros. 3. If you need to make levels with precise jumps, this outline mode can help make that a lot easier, being able to see Mario's full scope in his jump. You can shake the Goomba shoe into a stiletto, because why not? You know how most Mario games have really easy boss battles? Well, there's tons of ways to make them actually challenging with Super Mario Maker. Go make Bowser giant, push the ceiling down. The limit is your imagination, honestly. When you shake a muncher, some flies pop onto the screen, and you're directed to a gnat-smacking minigame, kind of like what Mario Paint had. Also, like, what the heck, that's totally random. Remember when Yoshi used to wuss out whenever Mario entered a ghost house in Super Mario World? I guess he's built up some courage in this game, because he's in the house right now. Good for him. Good for him. Claps for Yoshi. I always hated that you couldn't go backwards in a level in Mario Bros. 1. Thank God this was fixed in the Mario Maker version. The fire flowers are finally colored properly in Mario Bros. 3. Like seriously, they aren't blue or white, Nintendo. Gosh. You can find protective hats that can keep you safe from, say, getting squished by a thwomp. How this hat keeps Mario standing upright after thousands of pounds of force is beyond me, but it works, so whatever. For years, Nintendo fans have been asking for a Waluigi game. Well, that kind of already happened, because you can technically play as him in Super Mario Maker. So I guess that counts? When you share levels, people can leave comments on it for hints and reactions. Or, well, they could. Oh. I wouldn't try to erase Mario, he'll start to freak out. Aw, it's okay, I'm just messing around, buddy. While a majority of people's levels are kind of crappy, there's a few really fantastic and creative ones out there. Thank God you can easily find those in the star ranking category. Heck, you can even follow certain people to keep up with what levels they make. It's too bad they aren't notified about it, but it's still a great feature. There's a ton of levels created by the developers themselves too, including event courses which introduce brand new characters like the Squid Sisters or Undo Dog. Plus, you can play the exact same course that was played at the Nintendo World Championships. You can play as a trampoline.
Okay.
Warning! The following video is kind of over-exaggerated. A handful of opinions shared aren't accurate to my thoughts and feelings. Because Super Mario Maker 0.5, aren't you excited to dive into this one? I get Super Mario Maker on the Wii U is successful, but why does a gimped port need to exist? Look how long it takes to test the stage you're building. Good lord! Why don't we have all the pieces from the beginning? We shouldn't have to unlock them. I'd rather unlock amiibo costumes. Wait a minute, you can't use amiibo. Why? There's no reason they couldn't port the costumes over. Every 3DS is compatible. Like, what? Why? Oh, and if you want to share your custom levels, well, have fun not doing that. Even though the 3DS has internet, you can only share your levels locally, and that's it. The first level for the Super Mario Challenge is 1-1. This is a game about being creative, and we start with this. The bottom screen is useless. Couldn't it at least show the medals we can achieve or something? Is it just me, or does the new Super Mario Bros. U style manage to look worse than new Super Mario Bros. 2? For the levels where you have to defeat a certain amount of enemies, I wish you would keep track on the bottom screen instead of having to pause to check. Great, now I'm playing 1-2. Yeah, you know what? I already own Super Mario Bros. Can I please just play Mario Maker? Oh, lovely. Now I'm playing 1-3 from Mario Bros. 1. And on top of that, there's sample levels ported right from the first Super Mario Maker. So adding all of those, plus the recreations of older levels, equates to roughly 31 out of 100 that aren't brand new. I can't use buttons for the menu, and I'm forced to touch the screen. Why can't I do both? Where the heck is my Nat Attack minigame? You can't record custom sound effects anymore, which is dumb because the 3DS has a microphone. There's no 3D, which could have been a neat, distinct feature, but by this point, Nintendo stopped caring about the 3D entirely. The game still has those ugly shadows behind everything. We can see what's going on, okay? We don't need them. All of a sudden, new Super Mario Bros. 2. Also, wow, that's some epic slowdown in an official 2D Mario game. Who would have thunk? So the Mario Challenge mode has all these different objectives like defeating certain enemies or grabbing so many lives, but why can't you apply these objectives to your own custom levels? Creating your own levels is easy enough, but the screen crunch definitely makes it a bit more clunky than on the Wii U. You can't even search for specific Wii U levels. All you got are these random ones from the 100 Mario Challenge or these recommended courses. That's right, that means no bookmark features either. This really hinders the whole share aspect, doesn't it? You can no longer like courses you play or even leave comments. There is no way to play the course world without being online, which kind of makes sense, but this is a portable console. That means you can't play most of the game without Wi-Fi. Why are we forced to complete the first medal in these levels to see what the second one is? Just show them both to me. I just noticed that the bottom screen says press start to pause, as if every game in the past 30 years hasn't done that. Thanks for the reminder. Why is there lag on the menu? This game really needed more optimization. After playing through 88 levels and finishing the main story mode, your reward is 1 Edamame. That was totally worth it. Mario, what's with the sensual positioning with the pipe? Oh look, this is Heart Attack the Stage! Super fun! The final level in Super Mario Challenge isn't even that hard. It's just wall jumping and bouncing off enemies. Warning! The following video is over-exaggerated. Most opinions shared aren't accurate to my thoughts and feelings. The following exaggerated opinions are in the video and are shared unaccurately. I was going somewhere with this. You know what? Never mind. I can't touch the letters on the touchscreen. 0 out of 10, where's my refund? Literally unplayable. Where the heck are the awesome amiibo costumes? I guess I can't use all these amiibo for anything but Smash Bros now. Ah, so the replacement for that is dressing up my Mii. I could care less about wearing a denim skirt. Good thing I can wear this epic burner skirt, which is literally the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You can dislike a course? How dare you give me any chance of feeling bad about myself? Why does the new Super Mario Bros. Angry Son look so not angry? Like seriously, he just looks bored. It kind of stinks that all the characters in Mario 3D World play the same without unique distinctions. I get why they did that, but it's still kind of lame. The Goombrats look so derpy in Super Mario World. I'm so sad that the Mario Maker 2 stylus and drawing pad isn't coming to America, but basically everywhere else. Why is it called Super Mario Maker 2 when it's technically the third one? The big mushroom is back, but it got rid of the cool CRT filter. Have fun creating levels with a controller. Trust me when I say that you'll actually miss your Wii U gamepad. You know how stacking Goombas is a thing in Mario Maker and in Mario 3D World? Well, guess what? You can't stack the Goombas in the 3D World style. And you can say goodbye to overlap pipes too, even though they've existed for forever now. So you can use auto scroll for vertical levels, but not custom scroll. That makes no sense. It's kind of strange that you can't adjust the beat block music with the song or its own beat. Thwomps can go in every direction except up. Why not? We couldn't have done it without you, Chief. Ho, Nintendo. Are you slipping in the Chief meme? Uh-huh, yeah? No? Okay, sorry. Mario, you had 5 seconds to push the dog off the button and yet you did nothing. You know, all these anonymous people giving us jobs didn't need these blank Facebook profiles. Why not just use random me's? Man, I can't wait till the Kaiser levels come out while I'm also upside down. That's gonna be fun. I don't think you should use a Lekatu Cloud to work, Green Toad. Those things tend to disappear after like 10 seconds. There's story mode levels where you bring a toad back to the goal, but you can't make your own levels with this condition. The fact that I can't jump in this level is giving me the worst anxiety ever. Is it just me, or does the roll seem useless? You can't jump out of it and just kind of get stuck until the animation is over. You can't even roll down a slope. Those are some nice 8-bit statues. We're not getting amiibo of these, are we? Mario, you're not even holding the block. You have psychic powers and just don't want to tell us. Buddy? You gonna be okay? I didn't need to see that. Stop telling me I need help after losing like 2 times, Luigi. I can do it myself. What a lovely castle. Peach, it's literally the same castle as before besides the green and blue sides, but okay. So the credits show 8-bit sprite art, but there's still no unlockable costumes. I'm gonna hope for them to return in an update and then be disappointed later. Why can't you draw anywhere near the starting line? I have great internet, but every online multiplayer match I played was really laggy and not fun. You still can't just look up a name of a level. You have to know the ID for something specific. There's still so many power-ups missing. Like, where's the ice flower? Or penguin suit? Or acorn suit? I could go on for a while. So you can crouch in Mario Bros. 1, but you still can't slide down slopes? The UI for creating levels is way too large. There shouldn't just be 3 size settings. It should be way more adjustable. Nintendo said they're adding online play with friends, but this should have been a no-brainer from the beginning. The endless mode is cool, but it'd still be nice to have the 100 Mario mode too, so we can actually achieve a satisfying ending. I'm glad vertical levels exist now, but why can it only be used after going through a pipe? There is still a giant shadow over all the objects, and it's still unnecessary. If you fail a clear condition, the level just keeps going. Why not just automatically restart after failing? So after I spent several hours designing a course for a video, you know what I thought would be pretty fantastic? Saving it for later. Well, guess what? My data got corrupted when I tried to save my stage. But what if I upload the stage? Oh, look at that. Same exact problem. Now, maybe there's too many items on this course, but even if that's the case, why allow the limit to be so high? Classic Nintendo. Super Mario Maker 2 is finally out. This is a game I've been looking forward to for quite a while. And to celebrate the occasion, I have the one and only DGR joining me for today's video.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be here, but before we begin, we just wanted to let you know that there are some power-up spoilers in this video in case this sort of thing might bother you.
And with that said, let's get into why Super Mario Maker 2 is mind-blowing. In 3, 2, 1. We finally have slopes, and not just slopes, but different types of elevation. Super Mario 3D World is a game style? Who could have seen that coming? Finally, after over 30 years of Mario, we can play online multiplayer. Let's just hope it improves over time, since the levels tend to be a little laggy.
And you can build levels with a friend at the same time. Pretty darn handy if I do say so myself.
When looking at all the styles, you can see that it says extra game styles, which could mean more styles are coming in the future. While there's still a pesky course ID, at least it's only 9 characters long instead of the dreaded 16.
Like before, some of the older Mario games got new course themes and some wonderful new music, like this one for example.
Instead of just plain old water levels, you can now adjust when the waves come in as well as the speed of them. And the same goes for the lava and poison. Speaking of poison, the poison mushroom is actually back, and it's even more intimidating. This thing will magically climb up walls and chase you down. And there's the new super hammer, which lets you whack a hammer around and even create boxes out of thin air.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Swanky box? Control yourself, please. You're not in this clap. Sorry.
The snake blocks are some of the most interesting elements in Mario games since you never know which direction they'll move.
Oh man, the on and off switch is gonna make for some extremely creative puzzle levels, and I can't wait to tackle them. I love how the swinging claws change facial expressions depending on whether you're on them or not. As much as auto-scrollers can be annoying, it's really neat that you can change the direction as well as the speed of them now. And we finally have true vertical levels. There's so many more stage opportunities now.
The dry bone shell is such a cool new item. The fact that you can float across lava or poison is pretty crazy.
Clear conditions just made Mario levels 1,000 times more interesting. Sure, we still have to get to the end, but having to do things like defeat a certain amount of enemies or collecting so many coins makes levels feel way more layered. Not only is Yoshi back, but now you can play the red ones and spew some hot fire, just like in the OG title. Boom Boom is a mad lad. If you don't believe me, well, Nintendo said so.
Watch out for Boom Boom. The mad lad will chase after you, swinging his arms and legs.
See? I told you.
On top of all the new assets you can build with, there's a more in-depth story mode with over 100 brand new levels.
There's also a night mode for every theme, which changes how the courses work, like flipping the gravity or even giving you a moon jump. Even though Miiverse is gone, you can still leave written comments or even a fun stamp that just says, "Nice!"
The Thwomps in Mario Bros. 3 have new sprites when attacking, and it's really nice seeing all these smaller details added in.
Small characters in Mario Bros. 1 can now crouch, which was never possible until now. The new Super Mario Bros. Backgrounds look way more lively than they ever did in the previous titles. You can play Mario Galaxy music if you want. That's awesome! As well as some tunes from Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine. I needed to see that.
It's really nice that Nintendo took the extra time to polish 3D World moves for Mario, so it feels more seamless in 2D. Like diving with Cat Mario is way faster, and the long jump is quicker too.
While building levels is a little clunky using a controller, handheld mode is a breeze with either your finger or a stylus. It's miles easier finding the pieces you need. Now they're all organized in categories and put together in circles.
Instead of shaking enemies and seeing if they change, you can simply push down and see everything that you can add with a submenu.
Who would have thought Nintendo would bring back the Super Ball flower from Super Mario Land? Does that mean a Mario Land game style is coming at some point?